What if I told you there are 3 things the internet repeatedly says you need to do, but in reality is incredibly harmful to your soil, or it's just a matter of fact that it's slowing you down and how well your garden could actually do? And these rules apply for both raised beds and in-ground gardens. So today's video, we're gonna look at what these 3 are and why they may not always work and could actually be incredibly damaging depending on what your situation is. So let's jump into it. So you may be wondering why I'm not gonna show you any actual soil or how I go about doing any of this. And that is because, well, I live in Canada and it is currently blizzarding at the end of March. However, this blizzard does point in the direction of one of the things that we need to talk about. When we think of snow, we often think water, moisture, good things. But what if I told you of raised beds in particular, it's not always a great idea. This is very specific to a scenario where you know that your soil began to thaw and was moist, but then suddenly there's a blizzard. So that's the scenario for this bed. We had a warm streak there for a little while above 0, and that means I did notice some of these beds beginning to slowly unthaw. However, if I was now to pile a lot of snow on top of this, I'm going to end up with an immense amount of compaction because underneath the snow, I still have thawed and malleable soil that's now wet, and wet soil is the easiest to compact. So while you might think adding more snow means more moisture and good things, it doesn't always. Now, I don't think this is a situation that many of you deal with. It's probably just a me issue or Canada issue. If anyone wants to tariff snow, greatly appreciate it.
What a beautiful landmass, the most beautiful landmass anywhere in the world.
Now that, shockingly enough, leads me into my next thing that the internet may be leading you astray on, and that is not tilling. So if you're new to this channel and you haven't been a part of the geek crew for a while, you probably are a little confused as to why I'm saying that. And it's truly because I believe that every method that's ever been used is a tool, and those tools need and should be applied in some circumstances, but not in others. Tillage is one of those tools that for whatever reason we've taken out of the bank of appropriate. And I will say this with my chest, and it's a big chest at that, I truly believe that tillage is necessary in some circumstances. So let's run through what those circumstances may be, and then you can determine if it's a route that you want to go. So first off, tillage is great for breaking up aggregation in the soil if you have a heavy clay soil. It's also wonderful for weed control, and it actually is an organic method of weed control that is commonly used in an agricultural scale. The other reason for tillage is because we live in a residential area. Most people who garden are in an urban environment, and this urban environment has backfill soil, it has construction soil, it has a lot of heavy clays, generally speaking, a lot of junk, if you will. That soil is not turnkey go. Even if you put cardboard on top and then the whole compost or whatever you want on top of the cardboard, or even if you do a raised bed for that matter, it is most definitely never turnkey go. Because if you went the route of building upwards, you're going to end up with a perched water table. And if you just decide to try to go downwards without tillage, you are going to give up on gardening. I can guarantee you're going to give up on gardening mega fast. The purpose for not tilling is to help with aggregation. The reason why we want aggregation is because it reduces erosion. Now, the good news is that we can actually prevent erosion via mulch very easily on a garden scale, and erosion really isn't something we need to worry about. Aggregation is something that technically we could repeatedly break up with tillage. So that one, I guess it kind of depends on what your goals are. But ultimately speaking, if you want to reclaim a soil or make a soil more valuable, you need to put amendments into that soil. And these amendments can't simply just be broadcasted on the soil surface and expected to do their job. You adding compost to the soil surface, you adding lime to the soil surface, gypsum, wood ash, whatever you're choosing or deeming necessary to make that soil better for you, chucking it on the soil surface very rarely does anything. What you want to do is incorporate it into the soil. So if you need to add organic material to actually increase the water holding capacity of a sandy soil, soil, you need to till that in. If you want to actually change the pH of the soil using elemental sulfur or a lime, depending on which direction you want to go, that video there explains it a little bit, you need to actually till that physically into the soil. So that would be a reason you would want to till. Now the good news is if you go this route, you can and will actually see an explosion in growth. You will have one of the healthiest gardens that you've ever seen. Now the reason for that is because the influx of oxygen caused by tillage actually increases the amount of microbes in that soil profile, particularly the depth in which those microbes are presented, and that increases the rates of decomposition, and that rate of decomposition increases nutrient cycling, mineralization, all that fun stuff, and so you end up with an explosion of green growth. And this will happen every time you till, regardless. Long term, there are arguments for the potential of a hard pan. This argument of hard pan is debated, actually, shockingly enough, in the world of science now, because there is a belief that the use of heavy equipment across a soil that is not tilled also can actually lead to a hard. I've been looking up lots of journals on it over the years, and every time I do it, it does truly shock me. It's quite the debate, heated debate for sure. The other reason why you want to till, and the reason why I think you really should in these situations, there's two situations. Number one is seeds that are fine and they need really good soil seed contact. They need a fluffy soil to be planted into. So two in particular are carrots and lettuce seeds. These need a fine powdery soil to be planted into. So what you want to do is at a minimum till the soil's surface to allow for that to happen. The other scenario is with potatoes and root crops. I know, I'm so sorry. The only way you're gonna get big potatoes or big root crops is if you till and then you don't walk on that soil after. I've grown big potatoes. You guys have seen my big potatoes, if you know what I'm saying.
You're working with anything over a C cup, I got you.
And yeah, no, they grew that way because of tillage, hands down. They're really, you could pick a variety and a fertilizer, but ultimately speaking, it was a light, fluffy soil that I then proceeded to make sure stayed light and fluffy. And that's how I got those beets, carrots, and potatoes the size that they are. If you are in a raised bed, you're completely screwing yourself over, for lack of a better term. If you are not going into that bed and actually mixing that soil up, you're gonna see a couple things. You're gonna see the soil separate from the sides of the container or the bed, and that's because of aggregation. You're just gonna have really poor performance. If you are using peat or compost or any sort of organic material and you choose to just continue to let it to compact, you're gonna end up with like next to no air in there, particularly if you don't have like a pumice or a perlite in there to counteract that. So raised beds, I would truly every time get in there and actually mix it up with your hands quite well. Obviously you can't till with a machine, but your hands can do lots, like beat the fuckers.
Ay, ¿qué quieres? I love you.
Next up is going to be compost. So oftentimes when you think of compost, you think of only good things, but what if I told you that's not always the case? Compost can come with a varying different issues, whether it's persistent herbicides being present, high levels of salts, maybe it's not decomposed properly, or it has allelopathic properties or issues from plants that you used to make the compost. All of these are going to cause problems, so let's break them all down. Number one, persistent herbicides. This can come in many shapes and sizes. This is particularly true for people who are getting bags of compost that they don't know where they came from, or you're utilizing your local composting facility and the compost from there. That's what happened to me about 5 years ago, and you don't know what's in it. And you mix it into your soil, you're gonna get some crazy looking plants like this, and that is a sign that you have a persistent herbicide present in your soil. Now, I have a separate video where I'm actually gonna go over how to phytoremediate your soil using plants, whether it's heavy metals or actually pesticides. So I'll save that discussion for a different one, but that is something you need to watch out for, and we'll talk about how to watch out for that here once we get to the last one. So the next one being not fully decomposed. This means there's sticks, there's twigs, there's physical debris still present. All of these things are going to cause decomposition to still take place. Now, while you say to yourself, well, what's the big deal there? It's just What's the big deal? Couple things. Number one is depending on the volume of actual compost we're dealing with, we can actually get heat. And this heat around the roots can be high enough to cause problems for our plant roots and cause some damage. The other reason is that material that's not decomposed yet, whether you're rototilling in, for example, grass clippings or a compost, you have organic material that is very whole, and there's a lot of microbe activity around that particular debris. And that microbe activity pulls resources, and very commonly we talk about nitrogen being one of those resources, but it's more than just nitrogen. You've got air that's being pulled in, you've got water that's being utilized. It's competing directly with your plants to help decompose. And the plants usually are the ones that suffer, not the microbes. And so because of that, you end up with weaker plants or just no germination at all, depending on the situation. And yeah, just not cured, not fully decomposed compost is never a good thing. Other one being the allelopathic properties. So when it comes to allelopathic properties, these are plants. Plants normally do this. It's a very natural process that they do to help reduce competition around their base where they've let their babies go and where they want their babies to be established. The most common one that gardeners are going to come in contact with is actually sunflowers. So I experienced this once. I had a bird feeder with black sunflower seeds in it, and the birds loved it, ate it, and over the winter I just kept on refilling it, and the shells landed in my garden. Well, lo and behold, the entire space where those shells had landed grew nothing. No weeds, no plants, nothing. And it is likely, very likely, because of the allelopathic properties of sunflowers. So the good news here is that you can just dilute it with compost that doesn't have plants that have those properties in it. It's completely redeemable, but it's definitely something you want to look at before you just jump in with your compost. Now, the way that you're going to test all 3 of these issues or 4 of these issues up front is with something called a bioassays test. You're going to grab 10 pea seeds, you're going to grab 10 corn seeds, you're going to plant those in the soil, and you're going to see how many of those germinate. If it's less than 50% for either or, there's very likely something wrong. Now, you're not going to be able to tell what's wrong. You're not going to know if it's an allelopathic issue or a pesticide issue or a salt issue, or it's just simply not fully decomposed. So what you want to do is just the process of elimination, let the compost sit a little bit longer, let it cure, let it decompose a little bit longer, then perform the test again. If you're still seeing these issues, then it's either the pesticide or the allelopathic properties of the plants. And then it is, again, just a waiting game, because over time, these things can leach out, particularly the allelopathic side of things. If it's heavy metals, it won't, but that again is going to be in a separate video. But the pesticides also will begin to degrade because the microbes will actually eat it over time. So it's just a waiting game before you can actually utilize that compost. But you want to test it before you just go in with adding it to your soil, because it can and will damage your soil very badly. And we're talking a year, if not more, to bring it back to life. This next one I always have to laugh at, because I was not a believer in this in any capacity. And that's because on a large agricultural scale, which is again where my formal education is around, and just my work life, my personal life is around farming, I just thought, what's the point of mulch? Now, the point of mulch for gardeners is to, of course, reduce erosion, but also help keep up the moisture in the soil. So I underestimated not using mulch, and not using mulch will obviously cause erosion, which will cause a loss in topsoil, which is something we definitely do not want. But what if I told you that the moisture component, or the moisture holding component of the mulch, is actually the more beneficial or the more important portion of what a mulch does? So moisture, when we think of moisture, we think of plants and growing plants. And then once plants aren't there, or prior to plants being present, we think moisture is whatever. It doesn't have to be there. But the truth of the matter is that when water's not present, your microbes also aren't present. So if you've ever thought to yourself, I'm worried about synthetic fertilizers and the fact that they can, or momentarily, destroy the microbes in the vicinity that these are applied to. Well, truth being, no moisture is just equally as harmful as the whole synthetic fertilizer route. So if you're anti-synthetic fertilizer for that reason, you should be anti-moisture loss as well. You need to keep that biofilm up. It's a weird material that we don't understand. The medical world uses it and the soil plant science world uses it. Just it's a thing, biofilm. It's not fully understood, but regardless, you need moisture for that to be present, and that's where the microbes live, is inside of that biofilm. So without it, they tend to pass away and die. So mulch and keeping that moisture up, even when plants are not there, is very important to your soil's health. But if you want to know 25 rapid fire seed starting early spring hacks based on science, that video there, that's what YouTube says you should watch. So go watch it, because they know more than I do. Most people know more than I do anyways.